My name is Sonia Lokar, and I come from Slovenia, and I consider myself a political activist.
خديجة البعيشي من ليبيا. أعتبر نفسي ناشطة حقوقية ونسوية.
So we're very close to International Women's Day. I'm wondering if you could each tell me what International Women's Day means to you.
For me, it's an important day because this is the moment when women who are fighting for women's human rights, we sit together and we analyze what have we done up till now, and of course, what should we do in the future.
يوم العالمي للمرأة بالنسبة لي هو احتفال بالتضامن النسوي للحصول على الحقوق والنضال من أجلها.
Is International Women's Day relevant in Libya?
أعتقد أن اليوم العالمي للمرأة في ليبيا هو يوم إعادة حسابات، هو أن ندرس ما تحصلنا عليه من الحقوق وما الذي يجب أن نناضل من أجل الحصول عليه.
Is it relevant in countries where women have made such great strides in Europe, for instance?
I think this is more relevant now than it has been, let's say, in the times of the Beijing conference in 1995. Because my impression is that the things regarding gender equality in today's Europe are rolling backwards.
How are they rolling backwards?
Mostly in the field of women economic and social rights, but lately this is also accompanied by very clear attacks on the very concept of gender equality. There are very strong forces trying to get us back to the traditional women roles, and also the women reproductive and sexual rights all of a sudden are questioned practically all over Europe.
And in Libya, do you feel that women's equality, women's rights are moving forward or backwards?
أعتقد أنها تتراجع، لأن إذا حاولنا أن نقيم الموضوع خلال 7 سنوات من الثورة نجد أن أغلب القوانين اللي صدرت تنقص من الحقوق اللي عند المرأة، سواء في القانون رقم 10 للزواج والطلاق أو في بعض الضمانات الحقوقية اللي كانت موجودة وللأسف أصبحت نفقدها بهذه التعديلات.
Sonia, what's the single biggest change that would help advance gender equality in Europe, in your country, in Slovenia?
I think in the developed world, the biggest hurdle for women's improvement are political parties. And more precisely, the undemocratic nature of these parties, where old boys networks are really dominating the scene. However we turn, this is always where we are confronted with this, I would say, even informal but very strong male power within the parties.
And in Libya, what would be the single biggest change that would advance gender equality?
أعتقد أن التحدي الأكبر هو الثقافة السائدة بخصوص وضع المرأة ودورها الاجتماعي. فإذا استطاعت المرأة أن تثبت أنها بإمكانها أن تخرج عن هذا الإطار النمطي، أعتقد أنها تكون كسرت أكبر تحدي بوجهها.
Lately there's been discussion about engaging men as champions of gender equality. In Libya, how could you work with men to advance gender equality?
أعتقد أن هناك أكثر من خطوة لإدماج الرجال لمناصرة موضوع المساواة بين الجنسين. بداية مجرد أن يطرح الموضوع للنقاش والحديث على أن مساواة بين الجنسين، إذا هناك مجتمع يمشي على قدمين قادر على الوصول لتنمية مستدامة. هذه أول خطوة. الخطوة الثانية تأكيد دور المرأة بشكل فعال، يعني وجودها بفاعلية. هذا سيفرض على الآخرين أن يدعموا هذا التقدم.
And Sonia, what can men in Europe do to participate in furthering gender equality?
In fact, there are two sides to this issue, I think. Women's movement in Europe understood rather quickly that if we get really powerful men on our side as champions of gender equality, this will be a wonderful shortcut to what we need to achieve. But when we discovered this, we focused, in my view, too much only on these powerful men, because this was the time, a shortcut, as I said. But at the same time, we have a growing numbers of men, everyday men, or men in the middle, of power and without power, who are coming to our rescue, if I can say that, or would be really sincere allies in our efforts, but we didn't work enough to work with them and to work together to change things for the better. So I think this is one of the points where women's movement in Europe needs to learn from the lesson.
There has been a criticism in Europe of growing conservatism and traditional values in terms of setting back women's rights, women's equality. Do you agree that this is a problem?
Yes, I agree, absolutely. I think that the wave of retraditionalization is very strong, especially in these so-called new democracies. It seems like that these societies are going backward in the sense that their democracy is in danger. Autocratic leaders are popping up everywhere. There are open attacks on freedom of media, on independence of courts, and of course on women's human rights. And this part is the most difficult because this attack goes directly to rejection of the global consensus on women's human rights, which was achieved so long ago in 1995. And now all of a sudden, what seemed that it is a consensus, a real consensus of left and right forces, of the center and the Greens, all of a sudden fell apart. So here, I think we have a biggest problem.
And Khadija, in Libya, which is a very traditional conservative environment, people believe that conservative culture does not support women's equality, women's rights. How would you respond to that?
أعتقد أن الثقافة عادة تلعب دور في خلفية المشهد اللي تكون فيه موجودة المرأة. إن الأحكام المسبقة والتصور النمطي عادة يعتبر حاجز أمامها لكي تتجاوزه. الأزمة، النزاع، الحرب في ليبيا، الوضع الأمني غير المستقر، كل هذا هو قوتين تتجاذب المرأة في ذات الوقت، هل تتقدم أو تتراجع. ولكن أعتقد أن هذه الثقافة بدأت تتغير بسبب وجود نساء ناشطات حقوقيات قدرنا أن يثبتن أن المرأة بإمكانها أن تتقدم حتى في الظروف السيئة، وأصبحت تحل محل الثقافة السابقة النمطية ثقافة أخرى وهي أن المرأة قادرة.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.